concise history of Prophet Muhammad SAW, chapter 11.1, Prophet's marriage with Zaynab bint Jahsh radhiyallahu anha. Zaynab bint Jahsh was daughter of Umayma bint Abdul Muttalib. Hence, she belonged to a noble family. She embraced Islam by the teachings of Islam presented to her by her brother Abdullah bin Jahsh. She migrated to Medina with her brother Abdullah bin Jahsh. Both were very God-fearing. Prophet ﷺ proposed to Zaynab to marry Zayd bin Harsa, his freed adopted son. Initially, Zaynab radhiyallahu anha and her brother both refused, since both had different social backgrounds. When they heard the following verse, they agreed. Surah Al-Ahzab, verse 36. And when Allah and His Messenger have decreed a matter, then any believer, man or woman, does not have any right to modify it. Whoever disobeys Allah and His Messenger, he has clearly strayed away from the right path. Hence, the marriage between Zaynab radhiyallahu anha and Zayd bin Harsa took place, but the relations were strained. Finally, Zayd divorced her since they were incompatible. According to Arab customs, it was wrong for a man to marry the widow or divorcee of his adopted son. Allah wanted to abolish this uncivilized custom. Allah sent down the revelation in Surah Al-Ahzab, verse 37. And remember when you were advising that person, that means Zayd bin Harsa, on whom Allah has bestowed His grace, and you have done him favor, saying, hold on to your wife Zaynab and fear Allah. And you were hiding in your heart what Allah was going to reveal. And you did fear people in this matter, but Allah has more right that you should fear Him. Hence, when Zayd had accomplished his desire from her, I divorced her. We gave her to you in marriage so that in the future there may be no difficulty for the believers regarding the marriage of the wives of their adopted sons. When they have accomplished their desire from them, i.e., they have divorced them, and Allah's command must be fulfilled. When Zaynab radhiyallahu anha completed her period of waiting, the Prophet ﷺ went to Zaynab's house. Zaynab asked, will our marriage be without any trustee and without any witness? The Prophet ﷺ said, Allah is our witness and Jibreel is our trustee. It is in Bukhari that there is a similar hadith in Muslim too. Zaynab used to say to the other wives of the Prophet in a boasting manner, your marriages were arranged by your families. My marriage took place up there in seventh sky. Subhanallah. When the hypocrites criticized the Prophet ﷺ for this marriage, Allah replied in Surah Azab, verses 38 and 9. Here is the answer to the people's blame. There is no blame on the Prophet in that which Allah has made lawful for him. That has been Allah's way with those prophets who have passed away before this. and the command of Allah is decreed with specific wisdom and time. All prophets of the past used to convey the message of Allah and feared Him and did not fear anybody except Allah, and Allah is sufficient for the accountability. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rejected the propaganda of the hypocrites. Surah Al-Azab, verse 1 and 3. O Prophet Muhammad SAW, fear Allah and don't fear anybody else, nor worry about their threatening, and don't obey the disbelievers. Obey Allah only. Indeed, Allah is all-knower, all-wise. Follow what is revealed to you from your Creator. Verily, Allah is well acquainted with what you do, and put your full trust in Allah against their threatening, and Allah is sufficient as a disposer of affairs. The Prophet ﷺ invited 70 men for the banquet during this wedding, which was the largest festivity among all his marriages. On the occasion of this wedding, Allah sent His commands regarding hijab and also made it clear that no man could marry any of the mothers of the believers after the Prophet ﷺ. Surah Al-Ahzab, verse 53. And when you ask his wives about anything, ask them from behind a screen that is purer for your hearts and their hearts. And it is not permissible for you to annoy the Prophet. And it is not lawful for you to marry his wives after his death. Indeed, it will be a major sin in the sight of Allah. Note that making an intention of it in your heart or expressing it by your tongue is a major sin also. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it more clear in Surah Al-Azab, verse 4 and 5. Allah has not made two hearts for any man inside his body, and your wives do not become your mothers when you say to your wives, you are like my mother's back. And your adopted sons are not your real sons. That is only what you utter from your mouth, which is not true. But Allah speaks the truth, and He guides you to the right path. Call the adopted sons by the names of their fathers. That is more just with Allah. But if you don't know their father's name, then they are your brothers in faith and your friends. And there is no sin for you regarding this if you happen to make a mistake. However, if you do intentionally, it will be a sin. Hence, ask Allah's forgiveness, since Allah is very forgiving, most merciful. It is in Muslim, Ashar Dillana narrates, I have never seen any person so pious, God-fearing, and charitable who was eager to get near to Allah than Zaynab. This is in Bukhari. When slandering was done against Ashar Dilana, the Prophet ﷺ asked Zaynab about Ashar Dilana. Zaynab Dilana said, I have not seen in Asha anything but goodness and virtue. Ashar Dilana says that she never forgot the fact that Zaynab Dilana stood by me at the worst time in her life when almost the whole world had turned against her. Once the Prophet ﷺ said to his wives, the one who has the longest hands among you will meet me first after my death. Zaynab was the first among his wives to pass away after the Prophet ﷺ. Ashar Dilana said, we then realized it meant that the one who was the most charitable amongst us, will meet the Prophet ﷺ the first. On one occasion, Zaynab radiallahu anha called Safiya radiallahu anha Jewess. It deeply distressed the Prophet ﷺ, and he stopped talking to Zaynab radiallahu anha. Later, she felt her mistake, and on the pleading of Aisha radiallahu anha, the Prophet ﷺ forgave her, and the family life returned to normal in the household. You read about the honey offered to the Prophet ﷺ by Zaynab bin Jahsh in the life history of Hafsa radiallahu anha. It is given in Bukhari. Zaynab radiallahu anha was known for praying a lot. She hung a rope between two pillars in Masjid Nabi and held on to it when she became too tired during praying. When the Prophet ﷺ discovered the rope, he removed it and told her that when she became tired, she should stop praying. It is also given in Bukhari as narrated by Aisha radiallahu anha, Zaynab radiallahu anha was my equal in beauty and in the Prophet's love for her. The Prophet ﷺ married Zaynab bint Jahsh in 5th Hijrah, and she was 35 years old, and Prophet ﷺ was 58 years old. Zaynab radiallahu anha was with Prophet for 6 years and lived another 9 years after his death, dying at the age of 50 in 20 Hijrah. Umar radiallahu anhu led her funeral prayers, and she is resting in Baqi in Medina. She never went out of Medina after Prophet's death. She narrated 11 hadiths. She continued to work at tanning and leather craft, and she gave away all her profit in charity. Even when Caliph Umar radiallahu anhu sent her the pension of 12,000 dirhams, which he allowed to all widows of the Prophet ﷺ, Zaynab radiallahu anha gave it away to various poor families in Medina. At her death, her heirs did not find a single coin in her house. Subhanallah. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم.